Alright, so this is the next project we're going to be doing. And it may look complex, but I guarantee you it's very simple. All the stuff that we have done before, we are going to be doing essentially for this one. You'll be learning a couple new things, obviously, but for the most part, it'll be a very, very simple project. So we're going to go to File, Project Window, hit New, make sure we're in the 2510 folder, Moon, Sarcona, Accept. Oops. Moon to Sarcona. Okay, so I'm going to start a new scene. So the first thing we want to do is we're going to create the moon surface. So we're going to use a polygon for that. And obviously a polygon sphere is what we're going to use. Okay, now one of the different workflows we're going to be doing for this assignment is kind of building and texturing at the same time. Okay, and that's typically how I like to work, is build and texture. There's a couple times where I will build a bunch of stuff and then go back and texture a bunch of stuff, but I typically like to build and texture all in kind of one shot. So here's our moon. Terribly difficult to model. There you go. And if we look at the image that we have, if we look at this image that we have, you can see that it's bumpy, and it's not just like bumpy, but it's actually like deformed. Like you can see how this stuff is sticking out of here. Okay, now it's not a bump map. A bump map wouldn't do that. A bump map keeps the original shape, and it just makes it look bumpy, where this physically is bumpy. Okay, so this here is perfectly round-ish, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to assign a Mia to it. So assign new material, mental ray, Mia, and I'm going to call this moon, moon underscore Mia. That should be good now. Okay. Now the magic is not going to happen all in here. All right. So we're going to set some basic parameters. The moon has very little reflectivity, very little glossiness. Okay, maybe around there. I'm going to go to the hypershade, and if I go to the hypershade, you'll see this one turns out red. I don't have mental ray chosen as a preferred renderer right now, and the moon, or the Mia, is a mental ray only shader. Okay, so I'm going to click on this and just click that. So just know that that's why it's red. Okay, so I click the double arrow. I'm going to click on this Mia material, and I get this other tab. Okay, so I have two tabs. One's the material, and one is called the shading group. And the shading group is what's going to allow us to do the magic of this whole project. Well, the magic of the moon anyway. So the displacement material I'm going to click on and connect a file to it. Okay, and I'm going to go to the File tab, and I'm going to grab a picture. Now what picture am I going to grab? Well, I'm going to go to Google, and I'm going to type in moon displacement map. Okay, and I go to Google Images, and there's several images that are out there. We want to grab one that is like this. This is called basically a lat long image, where it's a latitudinal image. Yes, that's right. Okay, so this one here is probably a good one. Okay, it looks like we have a lot of detail in here. There's a lot of detail in this one too. But if you look at this coloring and that coloring, this one kind of matches too. All three of these could work. Okay, so I'm just going to click on this and go to View Image. And then I'm going to right click and go to Save Image As, and it's going to go to my D drive there, 2510, Work, my Moon folder, Source Images, okay, and then Save. Okay, so that's the displacement map. So let me hit back, back to Images. I'm going to grab this one, okay, and this one is more of a color map. This is what the actual surface would look like. The other one is where it's going to be bumpy. So I'm going to save the image as, put it into my source image folder, and then while I'm here, I'm just going to grab this other one. This one might be a good map to use too. Okay, so save image, moon, let's underscore it with bump 2. Okay, so I can minimize that now. Okay, so now in Maya I have this file, and again, if you lose this stuff, it's not gone. Okay, it's there somewhere. So if I go back to the hypershade, I grab my Moon Mia, I graph it out. Here's the shading group. I can graph that out. And then here's the displacement, here's the file, and here's the place 2D texture. Or, you see, there's a displacement right there. Alright, the displacement is a special kind of shader. So I'm going to connect my file to this. And I'm going to do, I can do either one of these. I think I'm going to like this one better, just because this one seems to have a lot of fine detail to it, and I think I'd rather maybe drop that in as a bump map on top of this. But we'll see. Okay, so Moon Bump Map 2, open. And that's it. Close. Close. Okay, now I'm going to render this. So I'm going to go to, if I hit render button now, nothing shows up. I'm in Maya software, that's what we expect. So I'm going to change this to mental ray, then hit render, then wait. And you can see what we have here is the surface is actually being bumped. It's actually being distorted. If you look at the edge of this, we no longer have that perfect sphere shape. If I go to the alpha channel, which is this guy, even the alpha channel is showing me that kind of stuff. Okay, but obviously it's too big. And just to show you what it's doing, let's say I took a cube and I put the cube there. Okay, so the bottom of the cube is basically touching that. We render this again. You'll see that my cube is actually gone. Okay, the way a displacement map works is it takes the black image, the black portions of this, and it pushes the black portions in. It takes the white portions of this and pulls the white portions out. And then it takes the 50% gray and leaves them at 50% gray. So, I'm going to grab my sphere, go to my Moon Mia. Now I want to get to that shading group. So if I click this bottom button here, it'll take me back to that shading group. Sometimes. Apparently not now. So I'm going to go to the hypershade and just grab that displacement again. That's all I need to do is grab that. And here it is. So I can adjust the scale of this. So if I take this down to 0.05, let's say, and then I render it, I should have a lot less movement on that surface. So if we look at this now, let me zoom in a little bit in here. I'll render it. If we look at that now, it obviously looks more like a moon type surface. There's actually like some bumps and whatever else around the edges, and that's it. Now it looks gray because it's gray, because we didn't assign a color to it. Okay, so if I click on this and I go to this color area, okay, and I pick a color like blue or something, it'll paint it blue. But we want to click on the map and go to File and go to Folder and use the Moon Map one here, which is actually the coloring of that information. Okay, so now if we hit render, we should get a moon that looks kind of like a moon. Okay, and I have my resolution under Options, Test Resolution. I have this set to 50% because this can go really, really slow. This is 4 seconds. If I put this here, it could take up to 16 seconds or 20 seconds to render. All right, so you may want to keep your test resolution down to 50% or so while you're working on some of these renderings. And at some point, I may actually just turn the entire moon off because it's that kind of complex surface. Okay, so far we're good. If I hit 6, I can see the moon shape on here. Now I want to avoid this peak. If you look at this here, this is kind of like where this top area is, and it just comes in kind of like squiggly and not very clear. So I may want to rotate this, and not may, I actually do want to rotate this, and get at a better angle. Now I don't want to be here in the dark zone because it's going to be hard to see anything when we're zoomed in. No, it's not too bad. Okay, but there's not a whole lot of stuff going on. All right, I like to find an area that has just a little bit more detail, a little bit more contrast in it. So something like this where I have this thing and like that thing, that's kind of neat. those will give me good little dips and movements. So look at that, all those little pits and stuff. Nice movement on here, but it makes it have some more texture to it. Okay, so I just rotated it just arbitrarily until it was there. I'm also going to hit 3. Now remember, when we were working in polygons before, is if we hit 3, we get this preview of what it would look like if we smoothed it out. Okay, well, in Mental Ray, it'll actually smooth it out. Okay, we're not going to see a huge difference here, maybe a little bit. There's a couple little peaks. Okay, and we could also go back to our displacement. Now, I hate having to keep going back to the hypershade and grabbing displacement. If I go up to the attribute editor and I go to focus, these are the top so many things that I was on last. And you'll see that one of them is displacement. So if I click on that, I can up this to maybe 0.1. And then go back and render it out again. Okay? And just like all of our other settings, it's going to be depending on your specific scene. You may have to go and grab it and make it a little bit more, make it a little bit less, whatever. Obviously that looks a little bit too pitty. Actually getting more towards the cheese look of this than the moon look. And 0.5 was good. I always like to see what the other values look like, because then you get something to kind of reference it to. Yeah, we'll leave it at that for now. Okay. And if we look at this, you can see too that this actually took 10 seconds to render this lower res one. Okay. So now that we have that, let's make a name for this. So we'll call this moon. Let's make a new layer. And I'm going to call this high res. And this way I know, certain things I want to turn off when I render, because they're just going to take longer to render. Okay, so when we start doing tests on our surfaces, I don't want to kind of screw it up by having to always wait for that moon to show up when I don't really need the moon. All right. So now that we have an object in here, let's set up our lighting in the scene. So I'm going to create a light, and it's going to be an area light. And we're shooting this thing basically like this. Okay, we're going to have some objects on top of the moon surface, and we're just going to be doing kind of like this 180, 90 degree spin. So I'm just going to create some lights in the front of this. So I hit T so I can move my light's direction. There we go. I'm going to make sure I have shadows turned on, which I do. I'm going to duplicate this and move this over here towards the back. Okay. And I'm just going to turn down the one in the back and leave the one up at 1 for now. And then hit render. And we'll take a look and see what that looks like. Okay, that looks pretty cool. That looks more moony. You see how we have this dark area right here. Obviously, if this was actually the moon, one side of this would actually be completely dark. We wouldn't have something like that. Okay, but we're doing a very specific type of lighting setup on here for our project. Now, if you remember from the last assignment, when we're dealing with a mental ray lighting and stuff, we want to do it physically accurate. So I want to turn my decays on. So I'm going to take this decay rate to quadratic. I'm going to take this decay rate to quadratic. And then I'm going to have to crank up these intensities. So this at 1 is probably not going to work. So maybe 5,000 would work. And maybe for this one, 2,500 would work. Let's try rendering this again and see. Okay, we're basically at about the same. Now that's just lucky guessing. That's all it is. And when I say lucky guessing, I actually mean years of experience where I subconsciously know what numbers to punch in, and that's all it is. Okay, so something like that will work. 4,000 and 2,500. I can adjust them later. Also, in my render settings, I want to make sure that I go through and do this enable color management. Okay, we want to work with a linear workflow, so we want to enable this. Default input is sRGB. Default output is linear sRGB. And then in our render view, which is this clapper, we have to make sure we go to display color management and make sure this is set to linear input and sRGB output. Now, because I changed those, when I render this, it might change the look of my moon, which it does. You see it got a bit dimmer. So then I want to go and just crank these up some more. So maybe 5,000 in this case would be good, but I think I'm going to go with 6. And in the back, I'm going to go with 3,500. Okay, now that looks pretty nice the way that's looking right there. Okay, I may take the stuff down, whatever. We'll deal with all that. Most of your work should be about 90% of your work should be done within the first, let's say, first day or two, and then the next 10% might be like the next 2 weeks. All right, because you want to just kind of get this stuff roughed in so you can get a feel for how everything is working. You could spend probably 3 hours tweaking this and getting it exact, only to find that you bring something else in and you don't see that thing, or you bring something else in and now it's going to change how you're lighting your stuff. Okay, so we do basic lighting. Okay, these are basic settings here. This is quadratic, 6000 intensity. My shadows are turned on. I'm also going to go under the mental ray section and say use light shape. Click on this one, use light shape. Okay, close it, and just verify again my lighting hasn't changed. Nope, we're still good. Okay, so I just want to get this stuff laid out, and then once it's laid out, I can always come back and tweak it. Okay, and that's going to be the motto of anything you do in this assignment, or anything you do in the class, is it's tweaking. It's getting the layout and then tweaking your stuff. Okay, so now that we have this guy and he's on the high res layer, so we can turn him on and off, I'm going to go through and label my lights. So this will be my key light, and this will be my backlight. If I need a fill light, I'll add a fill light. If I need another light, I'll add another light. But that's basic for now. Okay, so now what we're going to do is I want to create these little alien guys. And I just think the alien guys are just like little cute alien guys. So I look up alien cartoon, and I found an alien on here that I thought was kind of neat to do, which is this guy. He just has feet, he's got a smile, and he's got one eye taller than the other eye. Alright? And it's pretty simple. If you look at something like this, where the mouth is open, or something like this, all these hands and fingers, it can get very complex, and I don't want it to. Okay, I want you to basically have more fun with it than need to worry about, how to create fingers and all the other stuff. It's going to be the same way, it's just a matter of time. So I can start this 2 different ways. I can start with a cube, with my cube, or I can start with a sphere. And the example I showed, I actually had one made from a cube and one made from a sphere. Okay, so it doesn't matter which one you're going to start with. The process is essentially going to be the same. But I like the way that the sphere one turned out. Okay, so I'm going to use a sphere one. He turned out a little bit better. So I've literally just moved him straight up. Okay, I haven't moved him in the X direction or the Z direction. I just moved him straight up. Then I'm going to go to my sphere options and just knock these down. Okay, right now it's at 8 and 8. I'm analyzing what this looks like, and he is basically like sphere shaped. I know I'm going to need to extrude for the foot here and extrude for the eyes there. So I want to look at the top of this and say, okay, well, if I pull the eye out, I'm pulling it out of here and here, let's say. Well, I'd rather pull it out right on that line, or right even with the side of it. So instead of having 8 in that direction, I'm going to make 12. Nope, 10. Oh, I'm adding in the wrong direction. That's why it's not working. Okay. Maybe I just got this wrong. Oh no, that's right. Okay, sorry. I'm going to add 10. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to rotate this slightly. Okay, so I'm rotating it about 15 degrees. There we go. So this puts it on an angle, which is fine, and I don't want 15 degrees. Let's see, 13 degrees. Okay. So 18 degrees, which if we did the math on this, I take 360, I divide it by 10, that gives me 36. I want to cut that in half, that gives me 18. So I'm going to grab this face and that face. Okay, those are the ones I'm going to pull out for the eyes. And I'm just going to go to Edit Mesh, Extrude, go to the Move tool, and just pull these up. Okay, and I can go to the Scale tool and just flatten this out. Okay, so now if I hit 3, you see how we have these little tentacle things, or whatever, eyeball things coming up. So now what I need to do is I need to create this little socket. So I'm going to do more extrusions and try to create that round shape. Okay, now it's going to help me if I go through and just kind of square this off before I do that. So I'm just going to grab my vertices here, even the ones down there, and I'm just going to make sure my tool is reset. It looks like it's kind of funky. Nope. And I'm just going to scale it in this direction here. And scale it in that direction there, just to kind of get this to be a little bit squarer. Like that. Alright? Now, I don't even care about this guy over here. Go back to the top view. Okay, I don't care about this side, because what I'm eventually going to do is just delete this side and just duplicate that one over. Okay, so I'm only going to focus on really one of these sides. Alright? So now that I got that, I'm going to grab this face and go to Extrude. And I'm just going to switch to the Scale tool and scale it out. Extrude again, scale it up, extrude again, scale it in. Okay, and I'm just switching back to the actual Scale tool and the actual Move tools to move and scale this thing. So now if I hit 3, we essentially have that eye shape there. Okay, but what's going to help us is if we get an actual eye in the area. So I'm going to go to Create Polygon Sphere. Okay, so that makes a polygon sphere way down there. So we're going to move it up. I'm going to scale it down. I'm going to use my front view to line it up. Okay, and this is how big is his eyeball. His actual physical eyeball would be how big. Let's say that big. That looks good. Okay, so I'm going to need to take my piece of geometry that's here. Okay, it's lined up pretty good. So I need to take that piece of geometry that's there. I'm going to hit 1 to get back to rough mode. Grab the vertices for this and scale it up. Now I don't want to scale these vertices that are on the inside. Okay, if I scale those vertices, I'm going to scale up the size of these bars, and I don't want to do that. I just want to scale this up until, if I hit 5, and Maya doesn't crash. Oh, Maya crashes. Alright, I think we're back to where we were. Alright, so I have the sphere that's kind of sitting inside this eye socket. Like that. And then I have this, which I've just scaled up and kind of fit that around there. Okay, it's poking out a little bit. I can just push that in. Alright, so now what I need to do is grab, if I hit 3, you can see how we're kind of almost, making some sort of eyelid type thing. What I want to do is make this whole shape a bit more rounded. So I'm going to go and grab my Insert Edge Loop tool, drop an Insert Edge Loop right in the middle, then I'm going to grab the vertices on the top and just scale them down. I'm going to grab the vertices on the bottom, remember not these middle ones, just these outside ones, and scale those down and push that up. Okay, so I'm creating this kind of really, really rough spherical shape. Okay. Now if I go to face mode and I grab these faces here and I extrude them, and I'm going to use the offset this time, not just scale. And again, these numbers are your numbers. You figure out what it gets to get this nice little edge here. I just get a little edge with some offset. I extrude it again, so I just hit G, and now I can push this in. Okay, I can even switch back to my regular scale tool. Maybe I'll leave it like that. Let me hit 3 and just see where we're at. Yeah, that's looking good. Now, obviously, to you, you're going to say that doesn't look good. It's like crap. But we're getting there. Okay. So now that I have this kind of shape, I'm going to grab this edge here. And yours may not be doing this, but mine is. So I'm going to fix it. I'm going to grab these edges, and I'm just going to pull it back and scale it out. And push it over a little bit. Okay, trying to fit the entire eye shape in there. Okay, so there's that, good. Now what I want to do, if I go to the move tool, just so we can get something cleared away before we get further, and I look at this, I can see that my move tool is actually like off center. It's kind of not on a perfect 90 degree. Because we rotated this sphere, it's doing that. Okay, so I'm going to say modify freeze transformations while I have the sphere selected. And it'll just reset my tool, making my life a little bit easier. And who doesn't like that? Alright, so now I'm going to go to edge mode. I'm going to grab this edge, and pull it here, and pull it down. Okay, I'm going to grab this edge, and pull it up, and pull it out a little bit. I'm going to grab these vertices. I'm just going to scale them in a little bit. You can see where we're going with this. Okay, we nearly have an eye. Now it should be a matter of grabbing vertices and just kind of tucking them into place. Okay, if we have a little bit of intersection, it's not a big deal. We can always move it. And then I can kind of fix the top of this, maybe grab these 4 points, just shrink them down, move them down. There we go. So now we have this like alien eye in a socket. And I have, it's hard to see, but if I click on my sphere, I can see some of the sphere poking through. I'm going to grab the vertices and just kind of nudge the vertices around. There we go. Okay. Now you can go further with something like this and add a lot of detail. Just to show you, inserting more edge loops like that allows me really to get in here and do some more of like an eyelid type thing. Okay, just because now we have a little bit more divisions, a little bit more refinement resolution, we can go in here and start to tweak this even further. I could even grab some divisions here and there, and really start to shape how this guy is looking. Okay, and obviously we're getting kind of flat in the back, so just adjust points. And I grab edges so I don't have to grab the points, because I essentially want to grab this point and that point. And by selecting the edge, I'm grabbing both of those things. I'm just going to bring these in a little bit tighter. There we go. Okay, so now we have this more of like an eye socket type thing. You don't have to go into that much detail on this as I did, but it definitely kind of helps sell the idea of him. Alright, so there's his little eye socket. Very, very cute. Now let's do the leg. So his leg is just going to come out of basically the bottom, just like we did the eye socket. So I'm just going to grab a couple of these this time. Well, he has chunkier legs and they're kind of short. My guy's going to have longer legs. Alright, so maybe I'll grab those 4. Okay, just to kind of keep it square. I'll pull them out and then I'll see if I like it. I'm going to extrude, move tool, pull it down, and I can judge right now, do I like this thing being big? And I think I do like it being big, just because this guys are kind of big. These are kind of narrow, so I want to have a little bit of contrast. Okay, so I'm going to switch to my scale tool and grab the green and just flatten it out. Okay, and what I'm doing is, if I hit 1, I'm just flattening that face. Okay, so I'm just going to pull this face down, come on, until we get pretty close to the ground. Then I'm going to extrude it again, move tool, pull it down, and then I'm going to grab these 2 faces on the side. Actually, let's grab these 2 faces. Okay, and before I do that, let me just adjust some of these points. Okay, just like on the eye, it's going to help if we just kind of move these points into more of a circular leg shape instead of this kind of blocky shape that we have. There we go. That's better. So now let me grab those two faces. Okay, and this is, I'm just going to extrude and pull the foot out. And I'll go to my vertices, grab the top, push those down some. Okay, so now if I go and hit 3, you see the kind of shape that I have. It needs some work in here and in there. I think we have just maybe a little bit too softness right there. So I'm just going to go and insert an edge loop about here, and I'm going to scale it down some. Okay, and hit 3 again. Back to object mode, click off. Alright, we need a little bit more tightening up here, so I'll insert another edge loop right there and right there. Hit 3. That looks good. I can add a little bit of an arc to his foot by clicking an edge loop here and just pulling it up. And maybe pulling that down a little bit. There we go. So that looks kind of cute. Now let's go up here by the eye, and we'll insert an edge loop right. Not there. Right there. Okay, remember, we're only looking at the one side, not both sides. And maybe we'll grab these vertices and maybe scale them up a little bit. Let's try these ones. No, I think he's good with them being scaled down like that. Maybe even a little bit thinner. There we go. Okay, so now it looks like he's a one-footed alien with one eye and one weird bump on his side. So what we need to do now is we need to flip everything over. So I'm going to go to Mesh, and I'm going to say Mirror Cut. And what this is going to do is it's going to cut the alien in half, flip over half of him, and then merge those pieces together. Okay, so I have to look inside my top view and see which direction I would scale that piece over. So I would scale it, in this case, you can see it's the scale X that I would use to show the direction that I want to flip this thing over. It wouldn't be this way. Okay, that's just front to back. It wouldn't be Y for sure. That would be top to bottom. Okay, it's just that X direction is the one I want to get that same direction. So whichever one of these doesn't have the X direction in it, that's the one I want to pick. So you see YZ is the only one that has no X. So I hit Mirror Cut, and you see that now we have a perfect copy of our alien. Alright? Now, if it didn't happen correctly, sometimes it won't. Sometimes Maya is silly. It'll do that, okay, which is the opposite of what we want. We can just come over here to the Rotate Y and put in 90. Or we can just go to the Rotate tool and rotate this around until we get it in the correct plane. Okay? This plane is basically like a mirror where it's copying whatever's on that side. And if I go to the Move tool and I pull it, you can see I can actually, like, you know, mirror that much stuff. Alright, so that's pretty good the way he is right now. I like that, so I'm going to delete the history on him. For whatever reason, it doesn't delete the plane, so then once I've deleted the history, I can delete the plane. Okay, now this side over here is missing the eyeball, so I'm just going to take this and duplicate it and just scoot it over. Okay, and just look around, make sure it's in the head, which it is. Okay, now if I want to move these things, because I don't like them being vertically like this or perfectly like that, I need to add some divisions in there. Okay, but I'll add those in after. So I'm going to go and grab everything I see here. So I grab the eyes and the actual alien parts. I'm going to hit F8 to get to my points. So I'm going to turn this off, turn points on. And then I'm going to be very careful, and I'm going to marquee one whole eye socket. Okay, so I'm making sure I didn't grab anything on this eye socket here. And I can test it by moving this and seeing that nothing bad happened. Oops, I didn't grab my eyes. I'll try that again. I hit F8, get back to object mode, grab everything here, hit F8 again, there we go. And now I marquee it, and I can grab just this. Now you see I accidentally grabbed a point, so I'm going to hit undo, find that point, hold the control key to deselect, and click it off. Okay, so now what I can do is I can move this here, and I could even rotate it if I wanted to, and kind of nudge this thing into position. Just something more interesting. Same thing on this side. I can just rotate this and just give me a little bit more interesting look than just, you know, straight up. Alright, so that looks cute. Hit F8 so I get back out. I can add some more divisions, so go in with the insert edge loop. Long tool. Insert edge loop. There we go. I can add a couple divisions here. Add a couple divisions there. Grab everything again. Hit F8. Turn this back to points. Grab all these. You can see how I can kind of offset that even more and give me kind of like a little wiggly eye look. And the same thing on this side. Okay, just so they're not perfectly straight. I could even offset them front to back if I needed to also. I like them like that. Okay, so if I was to plot hands or fingers or anything else, it's going to be the same process. It's just me going through and manipulating that. Okay. Now, if I see that I don't really like, you know, how this sphere is coming out, I could always adjust it. I could always go back and tweak some of those settings. Especially when we mirror it, sometimes we get some funny stuff happening on here. So if I go to Mesh Sculpt Geometry Tool option box, I'm going to reset this. And this is basically a tool where I can just click and drag and it'll adjust my vertices. And I hit undo. So first thing I need to do is take the maximum displacement down, 0.05. Then click and drag. You see how much more subtle it is. Undo. I'm going to go to my brush size, which is up here, 0.1 or 0.05. Nope, 0.1 is good. Nope, 0.2 will be good. Or 2.5. There we go. Okay. And right now I'm on push. So I'm pushing vertices in. Undo. I can pull and pull vertices out. Undo. I can smooth vertices out. Okay. Same one we used on the nervous assignment. Same exact thing. So I'm going to go to pull. I'm going to say auto smooth. And I'm going to click and drag. And what this is doing is just kind of pulling it a little bit and smoothing it out. Okay. If I hold down B and I click and drag, the brush gets bigger. So I'm just kind of smoothing out the overall shape of the alien guy. Okay, and I can hit 3 just to see, you know, am I doing anything bad? No. Go back. I'm going to push in the back of this. Kind of pull it out a little bit too far. And I can go to smooth, and I can just kind of smooth out those points. There we go. Okay, so I just adjusted a little bit just to give him a little bit more shape. I'm not too terribly happy with this line right here that's down the middle. So I'm just going to double click that line and go to Edit Mesh, Delete Edge Vertex. There we go. So that just gives me a little bit broader shape in the middle. Okay, now I want to add a mouth onto him. So what I'm going to do is go to Face Mode and just grab where I think the mouth should be. Let's say right there. I'm going to extrude. It's going to look kind of funny. That's fine. I'm going to take my offset down. 0.1 looks good. Let's go to 1 mode. Yep, that's good. And I'm going to extrude again and just push it in and hit 3. Okay, so now there is my mouth. Now I can add a little bit more detail to this just by grabbing some of these vertices and pulling them down. Okay, so now he's smiling. He's a happy little alien. I'm also going to grab the edge mode, and I'm just going to close his mouth. It looks kind of silly with his mouth open like that. I'm just going to close it, and maybe I'll even grab these vertices on the side. Like that, and pull these up. There we go. So now he looks like a little happy alien with a little bit of a tail. We're not going to see the back of him, but if you're like me and it bothers you, then yes, of course, you want to go through and adjust it. Now I can grab a single point and go to Mesh Average, and it'll kind of average out those vertices. Or I can grab several points and go to Average, and it'll average all those out. And that averaging is just basically what smoothing is doing. There we go. Now he doesn't have as much of a tail. He still has something going on right there. It's good enough. Okay. So now we have our little alien guy. Okay, I think I want to add a little bit more shape to his legs. So I'm going to go to this edge and scale it down slightly. Go to this edge, scale it down slightly. Okay, good. Now I'm going to save. I haven't saved in a few seconds or minutes. I'm going to, his feet are on the ground, okay, just so you can see this. I'm going to save again just to be safe. I'm going to render. And what we're probably going to see is that his feet are now gone. But you can see how long it's going to take to render more of this. His feet are not gone, okay. This is actually working out good. Sometimes his feet will disappear because this displacement on here, just like the cube, is just eroding too much into it. And then we would have to just grab all the pieces and pull him up more, okay, until his feet are landing perfectly on the ground. All right, so there's our little alien guy. So let's grab him, and he's actually a low res guy, so I'm gonna make a new one. I'm gonna call this low res. Okay, all right, there he is. So now we're gonna give him a shader. Okay, make sure my lights are still on; they're good. And let's first do the eyes. The eyes are actually going to be pretty easy to do. I'm going to go to, first rotate these. Just kind of a bit of OCD. Let me center pivot this. I like to have the points of this kind of pointing out. Okay, kind of facing where we're looking at. Like that. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to grab these. I'm going to go to put a Mia on them. Eyes Mia. And we're going to not create, but we're going to drop in a file here. Okay. So again, we're going to come to Google and type in eye texture. And we get lots of pictures of eye textures in here. And again, you can't use these for professional use, but for education, they work great. Okay. So you can look for an eye that we see that would look good, and we want it to be pretty uniform, like this one, okay? And we want it can't be like this, because then that's going to be the entire eye. We have to have the whites of it too, so we can go with like this blue eye, we can go with this, whatever. This one actually looks pretty neat too, but it has the reflections in there, I don't like that. So let me try this one. It's kind of small, but we'll see. So I'm going to save it to my D drive, to my source images. I'll call it I1. And then I'm going to go back and grab this one, which is another one that I like. This one's actually a pretty big image. This is 2500 pixels, so lots of detail in here. Save image, I2. Okay. So now we'll just go to the map for our iMia. We'll go to the file, go to the folder, go to I1. Okay, we hit 6, and you can see that we don't see that eye at all. We actually see like the veiny part of it. Okay, I have to tell Maya where I want this image to be projected, just like we did with the radio face, but it's a little bit easier with polygons. So with polygons, I can simply go to Create UVs once I have it selected, go to Planar Map option box, and then just choose the direction. So if I look at my, not my move tool here, but if I look at my pivots down here on the bottom left, this is my Z direction is the one that's pointing right at the eye. There we go. The Z direction. So if I switch to the Z direction and I hit project, you can see now we have that eye perfectly centered right on there. Okay. Now I can grab this one and go to Create UVs, Planar Map option box, Z direction, project, and there it is. Okay, so now we have our eyes basically done. It's just a matter of coming into our Mia and just adjusting some of the parameters of this. Okay, I want to keep it kind of glossy, so maybe 0.8. Reflectivity, let's say 0.5. Should be good. Okay. So now our eyes are done. Okay, so let's save again. And now we're going to do the material for him. And he's going to be a different kind of material. Okay, we are not going to do a Mia on him because this is basically an architectural. This is woods, plastics, metals, glass, that kind of thing. So we're going to assign a new material. It's going to be a mental ray material. And we're going to use this MISS Fast Simple Maya. Okay? MISS Fast Simple Maya. It's going to say mental ray texture. This little box pops up. You just hit Use Selected and then close it. Okay? And then inside here, just going to make sure that my light map is working. It is. Good. Okay? Inside here, what this is going to do is it's going to emulate skin a little bit better. I have another little tail item right there. I'm actually going to delete this back edge just like I did on the front. So I'm just going to grab those. Edit mesh, delete edge. That should soften that out good. Okay. So this, delete history on him. This MISS Fast Simple, I'm going to rename to Alien Skin 01 MISS. S. MISSS. So what this should do is if we render this, we should have more of a skin look to it, more of a subsurface scattering, which is what the SSS stands for. Okay, we can see we have definitely something here. Let's zoom in a little bit and actually get it where our light is right behind him. Okay, so I'm going to show this real quick just so we can see what's happening. In a regular surface, I'm using this thing as an example. In regular Maya, regular rendering, Maya software rendering, light comes out of the light and it hits an object and it lights it up. That's all that happens. In mental ray, we can actually have things affect this a bit more, where we have light hitting a surface and then bouncing off and affecting other things. So kind of like this image, where you see that the light shines on the object and then also bounces around and illuminates some of the other stuff. Okay? When we have a transparent object, and this will actually be a refraction. Okay, when we have a transparent object, what happens is it goes into the object and then it bends the light. Okay, so light comes in and it bends it. And that's why we get that distortion. And then eventually it exits it. Okay, but with refraction or with subsurface scattering, what we get is the light goes into the surface and then it bounces around inside the surface. Okay, so you can see here, here's refraction. It goes in, bends, and then goes out. With refraction, we don't get that. With refraction, with subsurface scattering, we get the light goes in and bounces around for a while. So here is a good example of some subsurface scattering. Here is a hand with some subsurface scattering. You can see how the light goes into it and kind of illuminates the inside of it. Okay. Candles have subsurface scattering. The ear, if you look right there, has subsurface scattering. Here's another example. Here's another example. Okay. So subsurface scattering is how we're kind of lighting this thing up. Now he's not near where we need him to be yet. Okay. And it needs a little bit of tweaking on this material. So the first thing we do is you'll look at this and we'll see that we have several different colors. Okay. All of these colors will need to be gamma corrected. Okay. We also have a specular layer, which is right here too. We also have a bump map. Okay. So I'm going to take the weights of all of these down. So there's the diffuse weight, 0. Front weight, 0. Back weight, 0. I'm going to click on my front SSS color map, and I'm going to attach a gamma to it. So remember, it's under utilities. Somewhere in here is gamma. Right there. I can middle drag it to Maya, and then it'll just be right here. 0.454 for all three of these. I give this a color. So just for now, I'm just going to add a placeholder of this goldy color. I hit the back button to get back into here, or I can use focus to get back to there. Hit the map button for the back SSS color. Again, add another gamma, correct. Click on the value. I'll just click the same color just for now. Hit the back button. And then I'm going to need, I'll possibly need some diffuse in here, but we'll get to that. Okay. So now if we go through and we render this, okay, right now it's taking 7 seconds. I'm going to turn off my high res and then render this again. There we go. So right now it still takes 7 seconds. which we didn't see the moon before, so that's probably why it's taking the same amount. But right now, all we're seeing is a specular shine. Okay, so I'm going to play with the specular shine, maybe at 1. Not 1, sorry, I went the wrong way. Maybe at 50. And I'm going to sharpen it up a little bit. There you go. So something like this. And this right here is actually the specular, my light is shining on him. Okay? So if that didn't look cool enough, now we can actually go and play with this. So if I take my front SSS weight, I put that up to 1, and then I render it, I should see the front specular or subsurface scattering. Okay? And that's what I'm seeing here is the front. Now it should look a little bit more dramatic, and what's happening is this is basically just like flattening it out. This radius right here is what's causing that to flatten out. So I'm going to go back into my scene. I need to figure out how big is this object. So I'm going to go to Create, Measure Tools, Distance Tool, and I'm just going to hold down V and click here. And still hold V, click there, and I can see that he is roughly 6 units tall. Go back to the measure tool with Y, or back up to there, hold V and click on this side, hold V, click on that side, and you can see this is about 1.3. So what's happening here in our subsurface scattering is the front radius is set to 10. Well, you see he's not even 10 units, so that seems like a ridiculous size. So let's take this down to maybe like 0.1. Okay. Let's go back into here. Okay, so I had a little glitch there. This front SS weight, I just lowered that, 0.020. My front SSS radius, I put down to 3. Going too low with this, you're not going to really see any results. Okay, so this is 0.05. Let me save that. And then just to show you, I'll put this up to like 50. In this case, it's really not going to show anything. Nothing too drastic in that case. We could also come down to algorithm control and play with the scale conversion. And sometimes this number will adjust what we're seeing here too. But in this case, I'm not seeing any difference either way if I go to 1 or whatever. Okay, so basically what I'm playing with is leaving this at about 3. Just kind of like cutting that distance in half. And then playing with this front SSS weight to get just kind of like a good fill. So if I put this at 0.1, this might be a little bit too dominating. But what's also going to help with this whole thing is if I have a light that's just kind of specifically for this object. Okay, so what I'm going to do is take this area light that I have here and duplicate it, and hit T, and I'm going to scoot it over. I'm basically going to like knock it right on the back of this guy, so it's like facing directly behind him. Okay, like that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to have this light only affect him. So I'm going to hit Control A, turn Illuminate by Default off, and then I'm going to shift click this guy while I have the light selected, shift click the guy, and go to Lighting and Shading, Make Light Links. So now those two things are connected. So now if we render this, we're going to get a little bit different behavior because we have more light kind of shining into him. Okay, and I'm also going to click on the light and turn off Emit Specular. I don't want it to be emitting a specular, I'm getting this like weird outline around him. There we go. Get a little closer to some of these areas. And he's a difficult guy to get just because he has basically just like a thick area, then this big thin area. There we go. Okay. So now he's looking kind of jelly now that we've added that extra light in there. And the cool thing is we can crank that light up. So I can make that light like 6,000. And what that should do is just push more light into his body and kind of give us more of that that look to it. You can kind of see here along these edges where we're getting more of that glow happening on him. Okay, so now we can go back to our focus, go to the alien skin, and then we can play with this front SS weight. So maybe I'll make it 0.05. Okay, so that looks good. That looks like a nice base color right there. I could also turn my shiny or my specular off, just so I can get a better idea of what's happening with that. Because sometimes it's difficult to see with the specular on there what it's doing. And I still have specular. Why do I still have specular? Let's turn those colors down too and see. I shouldn't have any specular if I turn the color to black. Not the overall color. The overall color being black means basically get rid of all color. The overall color being white means use whatever values are down here. Alright, well I guess we'll just leave that. I guess we'll leave it. It might just be acting funny, or I might have. Could be this light. I'll turn that light off. No, it's 50-50. Okay, so it was just that light kind of shining in there. But with that light off, you can see we get even a better idea of what this creature is looking like. Okay, and we can do the same thing we did with this and with the creature. Go to lighting and shading and say break light links, and now this front light is not going to affect it at all. Okay, so this backlight, just so we can see it, the backlight is illuminate by default off, specular off, and it's lighting him up. This front light, we clicked on him, and then we went to lighting and shading and broke those light links. Okay, so we can do that kind of setup and really kind of force more light into the back of him, creating more of that subsurface scattering look. There we go. So now we can see some of that light kind of shining through onto him. Alright, so let's go back and grab his material. There we go. So now we can see that kind of pulling in even a little bit more. And we'll play with the radius a little bit here, just to see if now that we're getting this effect, if we indeed are going to be getting more of that. And you can see, look at that, 0.15, we're really isolating it to just this area. Okay, so we'll go to 0.25. And then what was happening before is our front light was just blaring it out too much. A little bit more. Alright, let's just take it up to 1 and just see what 1's going to give us. Alright, that looks pretty good right there. Okay, so that's at 1. So what I'm going to do is remember 0.15 and just turn that off. Then I'm going to go to my back weight, and I'm going to turn the depth off. If you turn depth off, then the radius here is tied into the depth. And that's what we want. So I'm going to take the weight of this one up to 1. We'll render it out, and we'll see what we get. Okay, and this is where a lot of the ambient or the subsurface scattering is going to come from, is that. So let's play with that radius. Okay, I like that, how that's showing. And this is basically we're isolating some of those thinner areas. By pulling the weight up, it's going to make it brighter. So if I crank this weight up to 5, you can really see how that color is going to just kind of start shining through. Okay, if I take this radius down, then we're kind of isolating where the back of this is. Okay, so I liked it where it was. I think we're at 0.25, like that. This at 5, I think is probably a little bit too much. Let's go to maybe 3.5. There we go. Okay, so now that I like this, let me turn my front weight back on. And it's not going to look perfect. Okay, we still need a light from the front. We can't get around that. So I still need to go in here. I'll set this back to 50-50. We'll see that our eyeballs are still lighting up. They're lighting up too much now. Let's take a look and see. Yeah, our eyeballs are like blasted out. I'm actually going to click on the eyeballs here, go to render stats, and tell them not to cast shadows. Okay, because I'm getting this funky dark spot inside here. And that could be from that. It's actually probably from the subsurface. It is. Okay. So what I need to do is go into this now and go to this light. Actually, I can do this one. Okay, I'm going to duplicate this light, move it to the front, and this light is only going to be for my little creature here. So again, I'm going to shift click the creature with the light, lighting and shading, make light links. Okay. Now it sounds complex, but just break it down. We have two lights just for the creature, and then our other lighting, this one is using for everything, but this light is only for our back stuff, or our other stuff. Okay. And just because he has a special kind of setup on him, that we have to go a little bit more advanced and kind of tweak these settings until we get something we're happy with. Okay. So now let me take this coloring down in that front light. Do I have the correct one selected? I don't see. Make sure you have the correct stuff selected. This is 8200, which is just blanking him out. Okay. So let's make it 2200. There we go. Now we're starting to get somewhere. Let's take some of our subsurface scattering stuff down. So I'm going to take the back weight down to, let's say, 2. And the front weight, I'm going to take up to 0.25. And you can see I've also changed the colors a little bit here. Okay, this is more of the look we're after. Let me get in close on some of this stuff. Or I'll just render it at full res so we can actually see it. Options, test resolution, camera settings. Okay, so now we have basically the lights coming into him, kind of bouncing around, and these lighter areas we get a little bit of glowing. Okay, and that's what we want on our little guy, so that he has that kind of light up. And you see our eyes are fixed because we added that in there. I could maybe take my front radius and maybe knock it down a little bit more. And maybe I'll take the weight of the front up to 0.1. Okay, I can even darken this front color. And I'm going to go back to my back color and lighten that up. Okay, so you can play with the colors and get different results. And obviously once you get good results, then you can go through and play with it. Holy cow, that's too much. I think I want to go actually keep that. I had the dark in the background like that, so I want to keep the back dark and keep the front light. There we go. That's how I want them to look. Now once I have good coloring here, then I can go in and say, okay, well I want this to be green. So I can go to the green area and start to play with the color over here. And then go back here to this area and pick a green. I can even grab this green and then just darken it. And I can see that that backlight is probably way too much, so I can click on the backlight. Everything's going to affect everything. Okay, and I'm not trying to, again, get this to be perfect, but I just want to get to a stage where I'm satisfied enough to move on to the next step. Okay, so now he's a green alien. He doesn't have any crazy stuff happening. I'm going to go back to my alien dude, and I'm going to take his shininess up to 20. Take this coloring up. And again, I could even click on here and give this a little bit of a coloring as well. There we go. I think it's going to help too if I go into my main color and maybe give this just a little bit. We'll go with the blue and we'll just see what the blue does. And sometimes having contrasting colors, having different colors in there, you get a better sense of where the colors are coming from. Okay, so now we have mostly blue in here. There's a little bit of green in some of these thinner areas. So then we could say, okay, well, let's take down the front weight then. Let's take up the back weight. So then we should have less blue, more green. There we go. So we have a nice little mix here, and you can see the green, kind of see the green, in some of these areas that are really, really thin. Okay, giving him just a sense of a little bit more depth to his texture. Alright, so now he's basically done. Okay, again, we can come back and tweak these at another point, but I think we're good. I want to also turn the moon on at this stage. I'm going to save and render it again and just make sure that everything is still looking good, good enough anyway at this point to keep moving. Because what can happen is as we add these lights, the moon's texture could just be blown out. Okay, so that looks good. I like the way that's looking. I want to make sure that he has a shadow. Pull this up a little bit more. Pull this in. I don't see him casting a shadow, so that'll just be one of the things that we'll have to look into later if it's an issue. When I did my other shot, I was basically like this, so you couldn't really see the shadow anyway. So I'm not terribly concerned about it. So I just want to make sure that if we do need the shadow, that we have the shadow there. And looking at him, he still might be a little bit too bright for our scene, so I may have to knock some of these lights down. But again, that's something I can adjust as I'm going on this project. Okay, so this is probably a good stopping point. Good stopping point for this project. We'll pick this up later and we'll start developing some of the other items that are inside of our scene.